Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another live. So, today I'm going to be talking a bit about what an actual project manager does. So, yesterday I spoke about what a project actually entails, the importance of a project manager, and I guess today I want to just go into a bit more detail about the job role, the typical types of responsibilities and duties and day-to-day actions that a project manager does. And yeah, for you newbies who are trying to get into project management, maybe you're a graduate PM or you're doing a career transition, this video is basically going to help you and just give you a bit more of an understanding of what the day-to-day responsibilities are. Okay, so if you see me looking down, I've got notes as well. So yeah, and I hope that the setup is a bit better as well than yesterday for you guys. I've got a mic now, the mic's back. Yeah, the mic's back. So you should be able to hear me much better than you did yesterday. So let's go. So one of the crucial aspects of a project manager's job role is to plan. So I would say not every project manager is a natural planner, okay? When I began project management, this was all new to me. Like I liked, organizing things. I came from events. So I really like the idea of organizing things, right? Organizing events and things like that. But I was never like a natural born planner. So these are the things that you're going to learn. A lot of the time, you're going to learn it on the job. You're going to learn it from a senior PM. You're going to be, there's going to be some kind of a documentation, a handover to help you. And obviously, videos like this will help you too, right? So in terms of planning, some of the key things that you'll be responsible for is essentially planning the overall project. So you'll be focusing on, who is going to be needed for this project. So you'll know who's going to be needed from the project, from the brief basically. So the brief will give you a bit more of a understanding of, what do I need to do? What does the team need to do? What does the project actually entail? So that's all going to be on the brief. All that information is on the brief. And in my hands-on project management accelerator program, we go through this in so much detail. We analyze the brief in detail and we pinpoint, who is going to be working on the project, right? So understanding what actually needs to be done is by reading the brief and understanding it, right? And the second, let me just get some of my notes. Yeah, so what needs to be done? So yes, so essentially this will end up being like your tasks and deliverables, right? So the tasks is what's going to be shared with the team, right? So you need to be able to map out their daily tasks, okay? And some of the easiest ways to do this is by finding a previous timeline template, right? I've said this before in some of my other videos. If there's a project that you've been handed and it's a project that your company is already familiar with, then there should be like a previous timeline template, right? And that would help you to basically map out exactly what needs to be done. So you've already got like a list of tasks, right? A list of the actions that need to be taken place, okay? So for example, if you are working on a video animation project, so this is the kind of sector that I'm in, creative games, right? A video animation project, you would need to, for example, start off by the particular task would be storyboarding, right? Because the animator is going to need a framework of the scenes, right, of what he's creating. It needs to be done, frame by frame. So that's really going to help you to understand, okay, if I have a previous timeline template, it gives me the duties already, okay? So these are some of the things that you're going to be mapping out. You're going to be mapping these duties out for the teams that are working on the project. So you're going to be mapping it out for a designer, a developer, whoever you're working with, essentially, okay? So these are some of the fundamental parts of a project manager's job. And another element is to assign, who will do the job. So sometimes you're going to be working with a resource manager. Sometimes it might be a head of a department who's telling you who's working on the project. A lot of the time, the PM doesn't always decide who's working on the project. We're normally given the actual team who's working on the project, we're told this. And yeah, it depends on the company and how they, how they do things and their typical processes. But yeah, finding out who is assigned the key responsibilities. Is there going to be a director who's approving the work, before it goes out to a stakeholder? All of these responsibilities and understanding these responsibilities is really important for you, so that when you go into a role, if it's a new role or it's a new team you're working with, then you know exactly who is doing what. So you're not kind of missing really important things from the task. Like, I think the worst thing is and I've done this many times, by the way, so I'm telling you all the things that I've messed up on as well, right? When I have gone into a role, this is when my earlier days, right, when I began freelancing, I went into a role and I didn't quite understand their particular process, because the thing is, when you're a freelancer as well, every company has a different process, right? So I went into a role and they had a strict policy that nothing leaves the building unless it's been approved, right, by someone senior. I didn't know that. I mean, you got to tell me these things. I didn't know that. And I didn't ask either, to be fair. I didn't ask. And these times I just started project management. So I began freelancing pretty quickly, to be fair. And so, yeah, I found out I found that out once the work had already gone to the client and the design director hadn't even checked it. And he was like, who did this? Who sent the work out? And it was just like, it was me. I'm so sorry. I had no idea that it needed to be checked. So understanding what is required in terms of, the people in the team who needs to be approving the work before it goes to the client, understanding people's key roles and responsibilities. There might be a design director, but he might not need to check the work before it goes. But in to be fair, in most settings, they would need to have eyes on the work, unless it's a very tiny project. I'm not sure. But even then, I don't think I've worked in a company where I might not have been the project manager to ask them, have they seen it? But the designer, for example, would have sent it to them anyway to get it approved, for example, before it leaves the building, before it comes to me. So some of the other aspects of planning is when things need to be done. So setting deadlines, and so essentially putting a timeline together. So you're going to know some of the key deadlines. You're going to know the overall deadline because it's going to be on the brief, right? You got the written brief from the client, and you have to know, when is it going live? There's no point in starting a project. How are you going to put a timeline together if you don't know when it's going to go live? You need to know that. So understanding that part of things is really important. You are able to set milestones, deadlines. If it's a large project, then there's going to be multiple aspects of that project. There's going to be multiple tasks that need to be done, right? If you're working on a campaign and it's got like a lot of deliverables, so a lot of the, final outputs, for example, it could be a project or a campaign where there's a digital ad unit, for example, right? This is more for publishing. It also includes a print magazine, article. The project also might include a video, to go onto their website. It might include a microsite build. There are projects where you have like multiple deliverables, and you, the one person, are managing the whole project, right? So you're leading the kickoff calls. You're the one who's telling the teams what needs to be done. You're ensuring that they are clear on all of their tasks, right? So you're going to have to set deadlines and a timeline for every single one of those tasks. So it's important as well from a project management responsibilities that all of these things get checked, right? So when I say all these things, I'm specifically referring to a timeline. If you're managing a large project, get the timeline checked. Get the teams, whoever's working on the project, to check the timings to make sure that they've been allocated the right number of days. If you're working with a developer and they're building a microsite, they need 5 days, for example. Check with them when you put the timeline together that everything that's in the timeline for their responsibility is all taken care of. So they've got their 5 days. You might need to squeeze it to 4 days. Check again. I've had to squeeze it to 4 days. Is this feasible? So they might say, no, it's not. We need 5 days. We can't even do it. So you're thinking, oh, it's only 1 day less. I mean, it should be fine, right? But in actual fact, they're like, no, we can't do it in this time frame. So you are you're creating these timings, you're checking with the teams that, the timings work for them. And if it does work for them, then, check in with the client that they can meet their timings too, because they might have, 2 days to approve the work, and they might say, oh, that's fine, but we have someone in the US who's also going to be approving the work too. It could be like 3 people who are approving the work. So you are going to need to account for that in the timeline too, which could stretch out, tighten your timeline, which in some cases, if you're working towards a tight timeline, can be really, really difficult. And that's a whole nother episode, a whole other another live on risks, okay, managing risks. Let me see. Okay, cool. And then, so what resources are needed? So the people who you need on the project, again, you're going to know this by the brief. If it says it's a design project, if it says it's a build, a website build, you're going to know who's going to be needed. If you don't know, you have to find out by asking. And again, like I said, a previous timeline template would really help for these types of projects, because if you haven't done it before, the tasks are going to be listed for you. Every time I've gone into a new role, I've always asked for that. I've always asked for a timeline of that project. Like, if it's been done before, can I please have it? It will help my mind. I will know what tasks need to be done. Okay. And then, what risks or problems might come up. So as a project manager, managing projects, tight timings, people, something always comes up. And if it doesn't, then you're managing a great, simple, easygoing project. They're the best projects. But also the projects that do have risks, I do find that those projects, they help me to know what to do when a problem of a similar nature arises in the future, right? So one of the students who's on the design project, there was a timing issue. I'll say it wasn't really a timing issue. It was more that the timings were quite tight, because the client had to share feedback like the next day, and sometimes on the same day as the work was getting done. So it was quite fast paced in that sense. And and then so one of the aspects of that got missed. So when I say one of the aspects of that, so I think it was what was it again? The project. The PM was just slightly late on one of his tasks, right? And the amazing thing about that is we were able to discuss it in our live call, and we were able to put together a plan together to mitigate that risk, okay? But the fact that it came up was really helpful, because it meant that we were able to put a plan together to mitigate the risk, reduce the risk. So we had like okay, if this happens, so the situation was, we're slightly behind now, but we can do A, B, or C, okay? And we had like a step-by-step plan for, what we're going to do. And it worked, and we caught up, the project caught up, and they were able to deliver the project. The project was delivered today, actually. So these that's why the hands-on accelerator is so helpful, right? For PMs who want to get experience, because when you are in an interview, for example, you can talk about the issues and the things that went wrong. You can talk about the things that worked. You can talk about the skills that you gained, like communicating with the stakeholders. Even though they're mock stakeholders, you're still having to communicate. You're still having to do a stand-up. You're still having to learn how to do a kickoff. I don't know about you guys, but when I see grad PMs, I'm just like, they obviously just graduated from university with a degree in project management. I didn't even know they did degrees in project management. This is all new. I graduated in 2018 with a degree in, was it 2018? Gosh, I can't remember now. No, I was 18. No, 2022. I started in 2018. Yeah, that's what happened. And I did media and communications. So project management back then was just like, I don't even think I even heard of project management at that point. It's funnily enough. So the fact that they've incorporated that as a degree is awesome. But I do wonder, if you get experience, if you actually are managing projects in the way that, projects are meant to be managed, like going through the whole life cycle of a project from start to finish. I assume you would in it with a degree, but yeah, who knows? So yes, another aspect of the a project manager's actual duty is to communicate. Now, this is so important. I guess this is why I touched on what actually happens at university, because when I was at university, I was so awkwardly nervous and literally wasn't really able to communicate properly. And I make myself sound really stupid for saying this, but I struggled massively in my communication skills. I was able to, write, but and even then I needed training, and it was my training as an account manager that really helped me. And to some degree, being micromanaged, although micromanagement is just like one of the worst forms of management, but sometimes when you're learning the ropes, it helps because you are having to be very particular and meticulous about what you're doing, and you're learning. The truth of the matter is you're learning. Sometimes, you can be learning under pressure, which isn't a nice environment, but I learned a lot about what to say, what not to say. That helped me massively. Okay, so for my communication skills, learning what to say, learning what not to say, learning how to talk to a client, learning the type of things to say to a client, like rather than, you wouldn't say to a client, for example, we're really late and I don't know when we're going to be able to get it to you, to be honest with you. You would learn the nature of dealing with these types of issues is to make sure that you've spoken with the team first. Always speak with the internal teams before you relate anything back to the client, right? You want to make sure that, what you're saying is actually feasible, what you're saying is actually going to be helpful to the client, and you're not going to essentially put them in a state of panic. Can you imagine? And they're like, but when am I going to get my first draft of the video or the first of the file, And I don't know. You can't say that. There's no way you can. So communication, learning what to say, learning the subtle. I like the word nuances, because a lot of it is subtle nuances. A lot of, you don't want to overpromise. So I like to say I will aim to get it to you by this day. If we're struggling, because at the end of the day, when you're putting things in writing, that is your backup. That is like your way of covering yourself. Okay, so it's like if there's a problem, you could always go back and go through your email trail and just say, look, I did inform you here of this potential issue, right? So communication, especially written communication, is really important. Any conversations you have with a stakeholder on a call, you always want to make sure that you've got that in writing, okay? So that when they do, if anything was to come back to you, you can always say, look, I did inform you on this day that the timeline would change. These are the new dates. And, as mentioned in this email, when you're talking to clients, your tonality needs to be right. If you're talking to, especially if it's different, if it's I say it's different, it's not different if it's an internal stakeholder, or it's not, it's all the same really. But when if it's a particular client, like a very important client that the organization is really relying on, the finances that come in from that client, that stakeholder, you want to make sure that you're talking in a nice tone. You want to make sure you're being polite, and accommodating, but also not being a pushover. What I mean by that is if they've only paid for 2 versions of their work, then you need to make sure that you are delivering just 2 versions. And if they have more feedback and it goes to version 3, version 4, that you are letting them know that this is completely out of scope. Sometimes you might want to get your wording checked over, your verbal communication, your written communication checked over by someone who's in a senior position, just so you can learn the right lingo. It really helps. I do that all the time, because different client stakeholders have different ways of communicating. Some are more sensitive, and if you don't know that, then, and you're a bit more direct, which might work for some stakeholders and some clients. If you're a bit more direct, then you're going to need to tone that down a bit. And it's always good when someone informs you of that before you start writing messages and sending emails and all that kind of stuff, right? All right. So, yeah, getting things done. And I wrote in my notes, getting things done among chaos. So sometimes I think what it is with a project manager, you are managing a project, but that's fine if you're managing a project. You're learning the project, you're understanding the ropes. But when you're managing multiple projects, that's sometimes another ball game, because you are having to stay organized, right? You are having to, know the status of every project, the teams working with each project. You are going to need to know that and be clear on that, because you could get thrown into a status call. A status call is when you just give a update on the actual project, right? And you're informing the different teams. It could be senior management, it could be anyone, right? Anyone could pop up in these status calls, right? And I think with a project manager position, we're PMs, but we're not like the most senior people in the room. Sometimes, there are other people who are in senior positions, and especially if you're working for a smaller organization and you are working, with directly with a CEO, for example, and if you're not, I guess, confident in the project and confident that the project, it will just be so awkward and uncomfortable for you if they're asking you questions and probing you, because the probing isn't going to go to the resources, it's going to come to the project manager. So you need to know your projects and all of them. I don't think there's been one time I've just managed one project and that was it. It's always been multiple projects, okay? And I was saying to one of the students, one of my craziest experiences was when I managed about 70 projects at one time. And that sounds crazy, right? That sounds like, what are you talking about, 70? That doesn't even make any sense. Who manages 70 projects? But I managed at the highest amount was 70 at one time. These were small task-based projects, right? For a betting and gaming company. And the client were internal stakeholders. And we were like their internal studio, basically. And my days were crazy. That doesn't even give it justice when I say crazy, but it was complete mayhem and chaos constantly, because I'm constantly getting asked questions from the internal stakeholder. What's happening with this project? What's happening with project B? What's happening with this project? And we were working on a system called Workfront. And in this particular role, the teams that were allocated a project were also speaking directly with the clients, the internal clients, right? And that's like a no-go zone. Like you don't do that. The project manager is the gatekeeper, and I was brought in to basically sort this mess out. So I had to put together a status sheet, and essentially be the blockage between the internal stakeholder and the resource, right? Which meant that everything fell on me. So I had to constantly make sure that every moment of every day, whatever changes were happening, that, I was updating it on the status report. I needed to make sure that the team were keeping me updated when they had done a task, and that they also were updating the Workfront tool, right? Otherwise, sometimes, you want to be able to just, it's important to ask questions, but sometimes if there's some sort of system that was always updated, that's great as well, because sometimes you can just check and then go and ask them, oh, how's it going on this? I can see on on Workfront, for example, whatever tool you're using, that it still says that it's in progress. So just checking the status because it's due today, so, and if you're managing a high capacity of projects, it can be quite difficult to keep a track. So as a project manager, one of your major roles is to keep a track of all of the different tasks for all of your projects and knowing where it is. So sometimes in the morning, if you're going to an office, just as soon as you get in, check the timeline the night before. That's what I always do, check it the night before. And then on the day, like the next day, for example, I know exactly what needs to be done, right? It's already written on my to-do list. I'm expecting, version 1 from the designer or from the creative, for example, okay? And yes, as a project manager, what you'll be doing is holding everyone together. So you're like the glue, holding everyone together. And that can be challenging in itself, okay? But I think that when you're in the role and you are acting, you are the glue, it's a great position to be in if you like order, okay? If you're someone who struggles to deal with working under pressure, right? Project management might not be the best role for you, you know, because it can be quite pressurizing when you're up against time, right? And you are having to be the driver, driving things forward. You know, I'm quite introverted. I like to sit, you know, be by myself, relax, get things done, you know. But when something goes wrong and it's all eyes on you, you are having to be the one calling those impromptu meetings, getting everyone in the room and leading and saying, you know, what's happening here, you know, and just finding out all the bits of information so that you and the team collaboratively can come up with a solution. So it involves being that glue, involves collaborating with all the different team members, collaborating with your specific, you know, line manager, collaborating with wider teams in general. There's a lot of collaboration for different aspects of the project. And once you are aware of who is responsible for what, then it makes collaborating a lot easier because you can go to the right people. And I think building those relationships is so important as well. So, yeah, it's all good being introverted. Like I had to learn this. Sometimes I have to step out of that cocoon that you might enjoy because you're just used to just doing, you know, being in your own zone kind of thing. But you have to come out of that in project management and you have to be the one in the driver's seat. You got to be the one that's speaking, right? You got to be the one that's saying to people, how can I help? Is there a blocker here? And if there is a blocker, you might have to be the one that's going back to the client, that's jumping on calls, that's speaking to, you know, different team members, updating different team members who are, like I said before, in senior positions. So it might be a little bit awkward or uncomfortable for you if you're not used to doing that. So practice. That's what I say. And that's probably how I became much more confident as a project manager through all of the roles that I've had, through all of the projects that I've managed. So going through one project was just like, I was starting to understand, okay, the life cycle of a project. Most of the life cycles are, you know, very similar, you know, the initiation, you know, to planning, execution, to monitoring, and wrapping up, and you're going through that process over and over again. So once you've gone through it once, this is why, you know, a lot of the time we do the theory side of things, like, you know, the different certifications you can get, but getting that experience is super, super helpful. And so there's a student who's booked all 3 projects, so a design, illustration, and a video animation project. Oh, Jackie, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, he'll be going through the whole cycle. So he's just finished the design project, literally delivered that today. So now when this particular student wants to build his own agency, for example, so he's going to know exactly how to manage that project from start to finish. He's gone through the ropes. And then illustration is going to be a different cycle where you start on with the sketches and then you're going into, you know, the coloring and the different aspects of the illustration, and then on to the video animation, which involves game capture. It involves, you know, a creative side of things. So there's different aspects of the projects basically. And let me move this so I can see what it has been. Sorry, I need to move my screen. So difficult transition to PM. At least it has been for me. What career was you in before? What career was you in before, Jackie? Because the truth of the matter is, I know and I mentioned this in my live yesterday, that I'm seeing how difficult it is at the moment because of the number of roles that are out there. But I know it's just because I feel like it's just this season, this year, because based on research, there's meant to be an uplift in PM roles, right? There's supposed to be that's supposed to be what's happening in the years to come. So I don't know if people are just, you know, companies are just not getting the budgets at the moment. Because now I'm seeing a slight increase, a slight pickup. Like every day I look on LinkedIn, I am seeing a few roles. It's just I'm noticing that they're just a bit more saturated. So there's a lot of people going for these roles. Marketing, okay. To be honest, marketing. Okay, so what? So yeah, I mean, because to be fair, that's where I've come from, like digital marketing, and I can say that I don't know if you worked. I guess it's more creative projects, right? Um, I'm linked with recruiters like Major Players, Sphere, SPHERE, Sphere Digital. I'm linked with those recruiters, and I have found that January, February, March, it was really slow. And I was asking them, when I was looking for just to see what was out there and let them know that I'm looking on maternity leave, I'm still keeping an eye open. And they were saying that it's been a bit slow. And I know at the beginning of the year it normally is, but I think you got to just keep an eye out, keep looking on LinkedIn. And I think connecting with the right recruiters. I don't know if you heard of Major Players. I don't know if you, let me think of a few others. Maybe I'll do a video tomorrow on some of the recruiters that I've used. There's a lot of people now that are setting up their own agencies. I want to say agencies, like their own sort of network and communities for project managers. There's a term, I don't know if anyone's heard of this term, called fractional project managers, where it's like part-time roles, if you're freelancing anyway. And I haven't gone into that or looked into that too specifically, but there is a lot of, oh, thank you, Morris. But there is a lot of, do you think a research engineer is good or a project engineer is good? You know, I think a lot of the more technical side of things, the more technical roles, I think that's where the money's at, to be honest. I haven't seen specifically, project engineer roles, honestly, because I guess in my sector, there isn't really the need of a project engineer. But I often see, I guess that's more IT, isn't it? Would you say that's more IT? I often see technical project manager roles coming up very randomly. But yeah, I know that's probably a bit more on the technical side than like marketing and games. But yeah, maybe if you guys are, yeah, maybe I'll do a bit more of a discussion on recruiters and how to find roles that way, and how you can really optimize your profile by just connecting with other project managers. The way that I have seen roles nowadays, right, if I haven't been connected to a lot of people or a lot of the recruiters, because there's loads of recruiters out there, right? So sometimes I will see a role simply because someone has liked a role. So if you start to, I don't know if you guys are on LinkedIn, but if you can start posting posts, like posting about your experiences, sometimes it can be quite daunting doing that. But when you step out of your shell, you'll be surprised at how many new connections you'll meet. And I think a lot of that is how you will also find new roles. There's one lady who connected with me because I put a post up, and then next minute all I see is job roles for, PM roles, right? Freelance roles, because you're freelance PM. So that's another way. Just connect with other PMs on LinkedIn. Don't be scared to send those connection requests out to people. I think that, yeah, that's another great way. Like I said, there's some communities out there as well. There's a lady called SB. I forgot her name now, but it's like SB something. She's set up her own PM community. So there's really, 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 different ways that you can connect to different people. I hope I've answered or helped. I feel like I've just rabbited on a little bit there. But yeah, I've had 3 final interviews for different companies. That's really annoying. Final interviews. I'm assuming you're looking for a permanent job, Jackie. Is it a permanent job you're looking for? Yeah, it's very saturated at the moment. I've seen that myself. I have seen that myself. You look at a role and it is saturated. But the fact that you've got the interview, it means that your CV's working, your experience is working. It's just like, I don't know about you, but I'm a Christian. I know that if a door doesn't open for me, it's not for me. As annoying as that is, it's not for me. But I know the struggle and I know the frustration. I also had a freelance role that came up for a client that I've already worked with, but because they were in a rush and I didn't get back to them quick enough, they kind of like just moved on to someone else. So sometimes it's just as frustrating as it is, someone was there, had one bit more experience than you did in some aspects. And it's just like, the way I see it, if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. If that door closes, it wasn't meant to be. And there's something better for me. So I know the frustration and the struggle right now, but believe me, when you get that role, you'll know that it's the right role, okay? Believe me, that's happened to me so many times. What sort of post do you recommend to post on LinkedIn? I think I work on a lot of beauty and girly things. That doesn't seem right for LinkedIn. Not necessarily. Do you know what I've learned, right? You can either make it a chore to post or you can make it enjoyable, right? You can post about one of the, no, not necessarily one of the clients that you worked on, but you can post about any aspect of what you've done that you enjoy. You can post about some of your personal struggles in order to encourage someone else who's also struggling. You can post about the fact that, you know, you are looking for roles and, you know, is anyone else finding that the market is a little bit, you know, saturated, or there's not a lot, you know, happening in the beauty sector, and you can turn that into a whole kind of encouraging post. I highly recommend getting help with post writing from ChatGPT. I don't recommend copying and pasting from ChatGPT because nowadays I'm finding that it's so obvious when there's a post that's been done by ChatGPT. What I often do with ChatGPT when I'm formulating a post is I might ask ChatGPT to help me to put a hook together, like a hook for my initial line, my startup line, a hook for like, you know, under 8 words, just so it captures someone's attention. I've recently been putting pictures up. I know that's another step for if you're, you know, uncomfortable doing that. But once you overcome the hurdle of posting a post, then add a picture, take a selfie. It doesn't even need to be in any kind of vanity way. It's just like, you know, it's just helping you build your personal brand. I have 100% found by doing that, it pushes me out. It helps me. It's going to help me by doing these things. It's going to help me it has helped me to meet new people because I get connections regularly, connecting with new recruiters. I think it's just you putting yourself in a position where if you're freelancing, you are just putting yourself out there in a different capacity than just applying for a role. Like, it's helping you to stand out among the competition because there's a lot of competition. And utilizing your experiences, you know, talk about your interviews, talk about you've had 3 interviews with 3 different companies, you know, and some of I guess it's being comfortable sharing your thoughts. It doesn't need to be a complaining thing, you know, it can be a bold statement about being ghosted. I've seen posts that have gone viral just talking about being ghosted, right? And not even in a negative way, but just more in like I think that organizations need to have a bit more integrity when it comes to, you know, interviews and, you know, people who are looking for roles, things like that. Yeah, I hope that helps. Yes, the dashes, exactly, those long dashes. I know it. I get comments. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, if I get a comment and it's from someone that's just copied and pasted from ChatGPT, I'm just like, I know what you're doing. I know it. I know what you're doing. So just be authentic and be yourself with the posting and try to enjoy writing. Like I don't think I'm the best writer at all, but I feel like I've started to enjoy writing and just enjoying sharing my thoughts. And if I don't get a like, I don't get a like. If I get a like, I get a like. If I get loads of likes, you know, great. But trying to detach myself from feeling any type of way about the posting. It's just the way. I don't know if you've heard, but there's like 1% of LinkedIn users actually post posts. That's 1%. So most people aren't even doing what you're doing. And can you imagine what that's doing for your confidence, what other people are seeing in you by just stepping out of the boat, you connecting with other people and seeing what they are up to as well. It's just a way of connecting and connecting with other people. Random case studies for my project section. That's really good. That's really good. Yeah, more personal type of posts. I struggle with that. What is is it the thought of just putting yourself out there and people seeing your post? Is that what you struggle with? Um, but that's good. I have recommended that as well. I haven't even done that myself. Funnily enough, put a post out there, a featured post. What did you call it? What did you call it? Case study. But I've seen a lot of the top LinkedIn guys do that a lot. So that's a really good way of sharing and showcasing your experience as well. That's what I'm actually going to be recommending to the people that are on the course that I'm doing. I say it's a course, it's more just hands-on experience, but to do that as well, because I've seen a lot of the top guys doing that. Yeah, and I find that as well. If I'm trying to brainstorm ideas about posts, I often ask ChatGPT, what ideas can you help me, or if I'm writing a post, but I'm just like, this doesn't flow right, I want it to flow right, then I would ask ChatGPT. I said, don't change anything, but just help it to flow right, and I'll just take out the dashes, of course. So yeah, I totally get it. But I'm going to try and be doing lives a bit more regularly now. So I hope I've helped Jackie in answering your questions. I'm going to try and do some lives regularly and yeah, and just be there for you guys, I guess, and just to guide you, because you're feeling the struggle. I feel the struggle too. Believe me, it's not been easy this year. And I was saying in my video yesterday that this is probably, in my 8 years of freelancing, this has probably been the hardest year finding roles. But, and this is another thing, if you're freelancing, right, you have to really take hold of that entrepreneurial side of you, right? Because you wouldn't be in freelancing if you didn't have that. Okay, um you got to be a bit of a risk taker, right? So that might mean you stepping out and doing things you've never done before, like the LinkedIn posting, right? And all of these things feel so uncomfortable. It feels so uncomfortable. Oh, bless you. I'll be doing it. I want to do it. Yeah, I will do that, because I guess I'm trying to go into a bit more of the basics of project management, but I know a lot of the people that subscribe already are project managers as well. So they might want a bit of, different angles. So it's good that that you said that actually. So that's good to know. So I'll definitely take that into consideration for my other lives. But I'm trying to be consistent with it as well, and actually go ahead and do them as regularly as I can. Easiest way for me to get content out. But I feel like I'm rabbiting so much now. Yes, I do. And I've started to send emails a lot actually recently. I will, if you go to what I would do is I'll pop um, the link to my newsletter in the description once I finish this video. So then you can subscribe. So I've started to write a bit more. I'm not even a writer. Like, I'm not a writer. I remember I went for an editorial role back in the day, and they were like, she's not capable. Can you imagine me told you're not capable of writing? This is way in my earlier days. Anyway, I'm rabbiting on a bit now. So yeah, but I do write to people. I've been talking a lot about recently in one of the newsletters about freelancing, and how the importance of just being open about multiple income streams. Because if we just rely on doing the project management work, as opposed to putting yourself in the position of authority in project management, then you're only going to have one income stream. And that income stream is only going to come from you working, right? So if you're a freelancer, you've got that entrepreneurial mindset already. So you've got to take it to the next level. Like, you have to take it to the next level, and you have to start building your personal brand, looking for different, imagine if you became like someone who helps people by giving talks to different companies. You put together processes. You go into, as a proper consultant, you go and put a process in place to help different organizations, and where that the confidence that you get from that, how that can open your mind into different areas and different avenues, and where you could go from that. Like, just step out of the boat and just, yeah, I think it's really difficult now, and one income stream is not enough, especially with the cost of living and how things have completely increased. Like, it's just, one income stream is just not doing it anymore. It's crazy now. So yeah, I hope that helps, and I'll be back tomorrow. The design project is finished, so tomorrow I'm talking through wrapping up the project with my students, so I'll be able to come on here afterwards. So thank you so much, and I will see you guys tomorrow. And hold me accountable. Put a comment and said, if I don't do it, you tell me you were going to do it. Hold me accountable. All right, my love. Thank you, Jackie, for all your comments. I really appreciate having a little chat with you. And Morris as well. Thank you, guys. And I shall see you guys tomorrow if you tune in. All right. Bye-bye.